Okay, well, ladies, thank you for being here. I know it was a last minute training, but since you all are helping us in the hallways with STAAR, we need to go really quick through the STAAR training. Okay, so there's, you can sign in there, and then there's also handouts there of the presentation that we're about to go over today. So I'm going to begin going over the information for the STAAR training. Okay, so for RLA, which is the reading exam, we are going to take it tomorrow, April 14th, all grade levels, 6, 7, and 8. The makeups will probably be around this week as well. In case we all need you, we'll let you know who's gonna be selected to help us with that makeup. Then on April 15th is 8th grade science. Makeups are all the way until April 23rd. Then social studies is April 22nd. That's only 8th grade. Science too, it's only 8th grade. Okay. The math, that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, April 29th. Is the 8th grade and algebra. And then 6th and 7th is April 28th. So April 28th and 29th, we're gonna be busy with math. And the makeups, they're only going to have up to April 30th to do their makeup. So what's the T here is with the implementation of the new science TEKS, new performance standards for science assessments will need to be established. Therefore, reporting dates for spring 2026 are dependent on the availability of approved performance standards for STAAR, grades 5 and 8 science, STAAR biology. In other words, the reference materials changed this year. So that's what it's saying here. And we got the updated version already set for our science testing session. Okay, so export of constructor responses from the CRS. Users will now be able to export constructor responses for spring STAAR assessments, and the information will be in a PDF format sent to the user via the Secure File Center. The information is available for the entire district, campus, or roster. This includes RLA, ECRs, and RLA SCRs, science, SCRs, and social studies. ECR response reports will no longer be produced after the spring of 2026 STAAR administration. The hotline direct, now they have a hotline direct. If a student writes anything alarming on the platform, TEA will send an alert to the DTC, CTC, which are usually either the principal or our counselors. They'll get that report in case they type something alarming or suicidal thoughts or anything like that. They'll get that message instantly. And anyone who you have designated with the HDA Hotline Direct Assistant role will get that information. An informative video is available here. We retain documentation locally, and remember that test content is secure and confidential. Reminder on supplemental aids. I know this is information that usually goes with our teachers, but we're gonna go over it just in case, okay? Supplemental aids for state assessment, content versus test strategy. What's allowed, it helps, it's a content reminder. It helps the student remember what. It includes content-specific facts or rules. Students must know the content to use to support. And what's not allowed is a testing strategy, like race, for example. I know the teachers use that, but we can no longer completely tell them race, because that's a strategy that will give them sort of like they say answers, so that's no longer allowed. And then mnemonic devices are also allowed, and blank graphic organizers. Okay. On all RLA assessments, students must specifically request the grammar and mechanics rules supplemental aid when they get to the ECR, and must return it when they complete their ECR response. The supplemental aid must be pulled and held on to by the TA. It is not to be handed out at the start of the RLA exam with all other supplemental aids that qualifying student select. Okay, so on how I give the materials to the teachers, they have a purple folder, and in there it says do not pass out unless the student asks for it. It's upon request. So most teachers, if their kids are trained, they're gonna ask for it. So that's how it will work in the classroom. Test security, all individuals administering STAAR should have completed a test security training and signed the annual test security oath. Non-certified staff who serve in a support role must have a supervisor sign their oath as indicated and be trained in test security. You all are the non-certified staff, which are the ones that are gonna help us, and I know that you had to do a training online. Yes, so that's the one that they're talking about, okay? We Secure materials include all online assessments and test session IDs, which teachers get. They get the session IDs. Test questions from state mandated assessments such as STAAR must remain secure until the questions are released and available in the centralized reporting system or on the practice test site or the TEA website. Test tickets are not secure, but since they contain personal identifiable information, they must be kept confidential. And all of that, once we are done testing, we shred all of those documents at the end of each testing session. What are the two types of irregularities? Procedural irregularities are less severe and more common than serious testing violations and typically occur when district testing personnel deviate from specified testing procedures. Annual training on test security and administration procedures and administration-specific training are the best ways for district personnel to avoid procedural irregularities. And this is the test administrator manuals that teachers receive when they, when they are about to test. Yeah, because it won't show. Okay, then we have, what are the 5 types of procedural irregularities? We have accommodation errors. Oh, okay, yes. Errors, accounting errors, eligibility errors, monitoring errors, and training errors. So we're gonna go over them. Accommodation errors typically involve providing appropriate accommodations to ineligible students or not providing appropriate accommodations to eligible students. For example, a student was provided an allowable accommodation. A student was provided an accommodation for which he or she was not approved. An allowable and approved accommodation was not provided to a student. An allowable and approved accommodation was not properly administered or applied. District testing personnel administered complex transcribing, extra day, mathematics scribe, or other designated supports without TEA approval. Then we have accounting errors, and these are improperly accounting for secure materials typically involves late, lost, or missing materials. Failure to maintain the security of the materials or improperly accounting for students' assessments, responses, or results. So what the amount of papers that, you know how you see the teachers picking up their boxes, everything that's in there must be returned. Everything. If there's 20 scratch sheets of paper, 20 scratch sheets of paper need to come back to us. Okay, testing personnel lost or misplaced student test tickets or secure test materials, that's an example. Secure online assessments were left open and visible or secure test materials were left unattended. A student was issued test materials belonging to another student. Those are accounting errors. And students' test results or test performance were improperly shared. Eligibility errors are typically involved administering the incorrect assessment to a student, not testing an eligible student, or testing an ineligible student. Which are examples: a student was administered an incorrect assessment, wrong grade level, wrong language, wrong version. A student was administered the same assessment more than once in an administration, or an eligible student was not administered an assessment. An ineligible student was incorrectly administered an assessment. A student who has completed only the first part of the U.S. History course was administered the STAAR U.S. History assessment. So district testing personnel failed to properly account for all eligible testers. So in other words, if the student is eligible to test, they all have to test. You can't be that teacher that says, oh, tú no vengas, don't be absent. You know, we can't do that. That's against regularities. Monitoring errors are some of the most common types of testing incidents, but the occurrence of monitoring errors can be reduced with annual training. Disruptions to testing that should have been avoided are considered monitoring errors, like planned fire drills, for example. A test administrator left a room unmonitored while students were testing. That's an example of a monitoring error. Did not monitor students during a break from testing. Did not ensure that all students reported to the new testing room after consolidation. Reinforced test-taking strategies. Did not properly prepare a testing environment or device for testing. Did not use the test administrator manual during testing, or did not read the say directions to students prior to testing, or deviated from the scripted directions. Did not properly complete the required seating chart, or did not provide sufficient time for the test. A test administrator did not actively monitor students and did not ensure that students worked independently during testing, or prevent students from using cell phones or any other electronic devices. Training errors. Personnel were permitted to administer assessments, monitor test sessions, relieve a test administrator during a break, or handle secure materials even though they were not properly trained or did not sign a test security oath. Serious testing violations, incidents caused by district testing personnel that violate the security and confidentiality of an assessment are considered serious testing violations. District coordinators must report serious testing violations to the TEA Student Assessment Division as soon as they are made aware of such incidents. And then these are more examples of serious testing violations, like directly or indirectly assisting students with responses to test questions. Like, let's say you're walking around and you're like making faces at them, or go check it again. We can't do that. You know, it's against, that's a serious testing violation. Or tampering with student responses, falsifying holistic ratings, viewing secure test content before, during, or after the test, discussing or disclosing secure test content, or asking even the child, how was the test? What kind of questions did you get? That's also not allowed. Okay, we can't do that. Scoring students' tests either formally or informally, or duplicating or recording any, or electronically capturing confidential test content. It's not allowed. Responding to secure test questions, fraudulently exempting or preventing a student from participating, receiving or providing unallowable assistance, encouraging or assisting an individual to engage in the conduct described in the items listed above, or failing to report to an appropriate authority that an individual has engaged in or suspected of engaging in conduct. So if you see some kind of suspicious behavior, and if you don't report it, you'll also be in the same trouble as that other person. Okay, failing to implement sufficient procedures to prevent student cheating, failing to implement sufficient procedures to prevent alteration of test documents by anyone other than the student. Anybody have any questions? I know I haven't stopped for questions. No?
Check for understanding.
Yeah. So serious testing violations, again, viewing secure test content. You can't look at the you can't look at the screen. Let's say for some reason you have to go and watch while the teacher steps out, then we can't look at the student screen at all. Okay. Any reading assistance of short or extended constructed responses questions must be provided for eligible students as an oral accommodation through text-to-speech. See oral and sign administration policy. This is absolutely no viewing or reading by a test administrator from student screen for any reason. We don't read anything to them because everything's embedded in the computer. Okay, penalties for violating security and confidentiality of assessments. TAC 101-3031 states that any violation of test security or confidentiality integrity may result in TEA taking the following actions: invalidating student test results, referring certified educators to the State Board for Educator Certification, lowering the school district's or charter schools' accreditation status, secure assessment instruments, criminal penalty. A person commits an offense if the person intentionally discloses the contents of any portion of a secure assessment instrument developed or administered under this subchapter, including the answer to any question in the assessment instrument. An offense under this section is a Class C misdemeanor, which means that if you're caught doing any of these things, then your certification is on the line. You'll actually see it. Yeah, it'll be taken away, and you'll be under, like, you'll be able to see it once you log into your TEA certification. Student cheating, there's an honor statement that the child's gonna sign, a paper they have to sign where they say, I will not cheat. So every student has to sign that form before they start testing. Okay, test administrator immediately stops the student if he was caught cheating. Stops the student test and notes the stop time on the roster. The test administrator immediately contacts the CTC to inform them about the suspected cheating. No one is permitted to review the student computer screen test content without TEA authorization. If the CTC is the person in charge of testing, which will be Ms. Rios, okay? Or campus administrator conducting the investigation concludes there is something they need to view within the student computer, you must call DTC so that we can gain TEA authorization for you to view either of these items. Notify the DTC if cheating is suspected, as it may also trigger any irregularity report. So general oath of test and security, anyone assisting with STAAR testing on your campus is required to complete the electric test security oath located in the student assessment site, no paper oaths. I think you guys have already filled it out because I sent you all the link to that one. The required LMS modules for certified staff, you all are only responsible to taking the test security for Texas assessment program, which you've already completed. Okay, so that's the one you had to do.
Yay, girls.
Yes, morning, okay, let's see, testing time, district and campus coordinators should schedule STAAR testing sessions for 3 to 4 hours as students are expected to complete assessments in about 3 hours. Campus coordinators should begin testing within 1 hour of the start of the school. Students must complete the assessment within the same day unless student has been approved for an extra day or becomes sick during the test. Student breaks may include water and bathroom breaks, snack breaks, lunch, medical breaks, mental breaks, stretch breaks, consolidation of students to another testing area. Students may not continue testing after the dismissal bell. Consolidation of testers, this is when we have most of our students done and there's only a few. Then we have to, I know here we are going to move them into 2 classrooms by the 8th grade hall. Okay, so they'll be consolidated there. Students who are not testing or who have completed testing should be participating in a regular or alternate class schedule in which enrichment activities are being shared. Students who are still testing after about 4 hours should be consolidated to continue testing. And the consolidation plans have been submitted already. Test administrators must inform students that at some point, students who are still testing will be grouped together and students who have completed testing will join a regular or alternate class schedule. Room consolidations, new forms from database are required. That's for the teachers. We'll get new rosters. Students must be monitored to prevent access to non-allowable items like cell phones or backpacks. So like, let's say you're all taking care of the hallways. When you see that we're consolidating, make sure that you're actively watching the students, that they're not talking to each other or anything like that, or that they're carrying something that they're not supposed to be carrying. Late arriving students, the district testing personnel must determine if a late arriving student will have sufficient time to test during that school day, or if the student should test on another day within the testing window. Keeping in mind the following requirements. Each student must be allowed sufficient time to take the assessment. The test directions must be read to late arriving students. No student may begin a test after 10 a.m. So if they get here at 10:30, that's it. We need to do it the following day. And before they go into the classroom, we read the directions there to them, have them already ready, and then we let them inside so we don't interrupt the session, the other kids. Plan for each student to have at least 4 hours to test. Students who become sick during assessment. A student who becomes sick and leaves campus during the assessment may complete the assessment as needed on a different day within the scheduled testing window. The test delivery system will log students' responses 8 hours after an online assessment has been paused. Students who continue testing on another day will be able to view all questions but will not be able to edit responses marked or construct the responses begun on a previous day, as these questions will not be unlocked. Call student assessment department to report any student who will be on pause. So if there is a child that feels extremely sick and we can pause the test, they can go home and then they continue tomorrow, but there's only an 8-hour window. Once the 8-hour window is automatically shut it down for them. Calculators are only allowable for science, 8th grade science, and for math, but I know our teachers are using the embedded calculator on the computer, so this year they will not be receiving the 8th graders an actual calculator, only for science. Dictionaries, only for RLA. The STAAR released and practice test, since our students did the STAAR interim, that is considered their practice test, so they've already completed that part of our administration. Roles and responsibilities. Let's see, I'm only gonna go over this one. Non-certified staff attend appropriate campus trainings, which y'all are doing today. Sign and submit a general oath. No administration processes, policies and procedures. Assist with student late arrivals or movement. Monitor hall activity. Ensure test security and confidentiality before, during, and after test. Reports suspected violations. So since you're gonna be in the hallway, again, don't talk to the students about the test. Yes, you can motivate them, échale ganas, that's about it. But nothing, how is the test? Is it hard? What do you think? Nothing like that. Let's not have those kind of conversations with our students. Accessibility features. are procedures and materials that should be made available on state assessments to students who regularly use them during classroom instruction. A student may not be required to use accessibility features during testing, and there is no need to document their use in time for test administration. Designated supports, for example, these are some of the groups, different kind of groups that our students can get accommodations through. Which is some kids can get calculation aids, our 504 students, content language support, the oral administration where they get it read to them, they can get it through the 504 and through an ARD committee. Braille, individualized structured reminders, manipulating test materials, mathematics manipulatives, oral signs administration, supplemental aids. Admission review and dismissal, which is your ARD committee, which is for special education students, can receive basic trail, braille, calculation aids, content and language support, individualized structured reminders, large print, manipulating test materials, mathematics manipulatives, oral signs administration, spelling assistance, and supplemental aids. Then we have the section 504 committee, which are the students with other health impairments and dyslexia, which is also basic transcribing, braille, calculation aids, content and language supports, individualized structured reminders, large print, manipulating test materials, mathematics manipulatives, oral signs administration, spelling assistance, and supplemental aids. The Language Proficiency Assessment Committee, which is your LPAC, all your EB students. The only two accommodations they may receive through the LPAC committee are the content and language support and the oral signs administration. Okay, now verifying the testing materials, the STAAR Test Administrator Manual. We have to make sure that every test administrator receives a manual. The database forms would be the material control form, the testing roster, the seating chart, the attendance roster, the lunch roster, the electronic device form, student testing tickets, session ID numbers, the testing do not disturb sign for each test room entry point, so every room has to have a testing sign. Telecommunication policy. This is where the students are aware that they cannot have any kind of telephone with them while they're testing. Reference material, a pencil or pen. In this case, we'll be using pencils. Scratch paper, that's two pages of scratch paper for each student. The headphones headphones are only allowable for those students who do oral administration, and supplemental aids for those needs, for those students that have that accommodation. The following can be provided as handheld dictionaries, and that's only for RLA and English. And the bilingual dictionaries with definitions are permissible. Math, science, and social studies only get the bilingual dictionaries, word to word. Dictionaries are permissible. The graphing calculators or decimals app for STAAR grade 8 and the EOC Algebra 1. Graphing or scientific calculator for STAAR grade 8, science, and for and EOC biology test. Then we have the test administrator manual. Test administrators must help students log in to and access their assessments. So teachers must be walking around to assist the student to make sure that they're at the right platform and that they're able to log in. They complete the seating charts, including all required information. And the seating chart is in the materials that we give to our teachers. So they have to fill out the time that they start and the time that each student is finishing their test. You maintain test security, including active monitoring. Every teacher has to make sure that they're active monitoring in the classroom, going through desks, making sure that the students are actively working and focused on their assessment. The read aloud directions, the test administrator must read aloud word for word the bold text after the word stay. Some directions use brackets within the read aloud text to indicate where information should be verbally inserted. For example, in the statement, check that the test you select is the STAAR RLA 8th grade test. So the student needs to verify that they're taking the correct test. The test administrator should verbally fill in the name of the assessment, such as grade 8 social studies, as he or she is reading the directions to the students. The directions may be repeated as many times as needed. The text in italics, which is this word circled, is information meant for the test administrator and should not be read aloud to students. So this is what the teacher would say once they start their test administration. And this is the point where the students are already logged in, they've had their test ticket, they have the information that they need in order for them to proceed into testing. The teacher is responsible to say, if you have any questions about the instructions or the tools, please raise your hand so that I may help you. You should remain seated and quiet so that you do not disturb others who are testing. Are there any questions? So we have to make sure that the teacher says this before the kids resume with their testing. Everything that's bold, the teacher will read. For students receiving content and language supports, all subject areas. So you should know that in your roster, you're going to identify the type of test your students will be performing. And if your students are working on a content language support test, then this is the boxes that administrator needs to read also, including the top one. If you're testing a class with none accommodations or they don't have content language support, then we skip the box and we go to our next area. But if you do, this is what you would say for the content language support. This test has supports for you to use. You will see borders around words or small arrows next to questions and answer choices. Click these borders or arrows to see words or pictures that may help you. Okay? Then you use this chart below when a student has a question about one or more of the tools in the online system. So make sure that you look at this chart before we go to testing so you can know what each icon represents. If a student is having trouble locating a tool, point to the proper icon in the icon column below. If a student asks how a tool or button functions, the test administrator may read aloud the information in the text column, which is this part. The information in this column may be read verbatim, paraphrased, or clarified as needed. Test administrators may also point to the help icon below to remind students of the help button located in the top right of the screen. So the student has a help button that you may also let them know that they may press that icon if they need further assistance. But this is what you would read verbatim, okay? You cannot say it in your own words, you read exactly how it is from the manual. So, for example, if you click on the icon for next, you're going to say you can use next to move forward through the test. You can use back. This is the back icon. You can use back to move backward through the test. Mark for review. This is what you would tell the student. You can mark for review to flag a question to review later. When you mark a question for review, a flag will appear on the question number. The question mark means help, and you're going to verbatimly say you can use help to remind you how to use the tools. So we have several of the icons here, and you have to verbatimly read them to the student when they ask for help. Another one could be the pause button. You can pause to stop your test for short breaks. The system saves your work and returns you to the same spot when you come back. The context menu, you can use context menu to see additional tools such as sticky notes that are available for the question. Then you have the highlight selection. You can use the highlight selection to mark important words or numbers. You can erase highlights by selecting reset highlighting. So whatever icon they need help with, you need to read it. Okay, test administrator responsibilities. When we prepare, we review test rooms. We ensure students are in the correct test room and taking the correct test. Sufficiently separate students and clear testing areas of all books, materials not required for testing. All classrooms need to have nothing on the walls. Everything has to be clean. So if when you all are monitoring the hallways, that's what you're supposed to see, a clean classroom with nothing where it can help the student. All bulletin boards, instructional displays that may be source of direct answers must be covered or taken down for the duration of the assessment window. 1 pair of headphones per student for TTS and STT. Make every effort to prevent students from seeing each other's monitors, okay? Verifying testing materials. This is for the teachers when they come in and turn in the boxes to me. They need to make sure they have their material, the testing rosters, the seating chart, everything that they took in that box, they need to come back. Everything, every single thing, every pencil, every headphone, scratch paper, etc. Okay, this is a testing administrator manual that the teachers will read the directions from. That's the seating chart where they're gonna write all the information they need on the student. Staff electronic devices. District and campus staff may have access to communication devices during test administrations for the purpose of satisfying school safety standards, communicating with the campus testing coordinator or administrator for immediate assistance. Devices should otherwise not be in the use while actively monitoring a state assessment or serving in a support role during a state assessment. So that means we're not supposed to use our phones in the hallways. Okay, we keep it, unless there's an emergency, then we can use them for that. Okay. Student login sequence, this is for the teachers, and it's a different process of how they log in. Okay. Active monitoring is required, and you all are only required to do active monitoring in the hallways back and forth. Okay, school-wide emergencies. If a school-wide emergency disrupts testing, ensuring student safety is the top priority. Students should leave their assessments where they are without pausing and follow the school's emergency procedures. Test administrators must caution their testing groups to avoid discussing the assessment. Test administrators should not instruct students to pause their assessments. Online assessments will automatically pause when the test devices have been idle for 20 minutes. Submission and post-test procedures, and this is what the teachers will see once the child is done. All of them will be answered, and are you sure you want to submit? And that this is practically the only screen that a teacher can see. Okay, yes, they're all complete, and then they tell the child to submit. Okay, again, they return all the materials in the box when they come to me, and we're dismissed after that. Do y'all have any questions as far as your duties in the hallway? No? I know some of you will be in the restrooms and some of you will just be walking the halls. And in the restrooms, we have to make sure that they don't take too long, that we move them, because if not, and if it's the same child, tell them, okay, I'm gonna have to tell Ms. Murillo, you already came 4 times, because then they're just wasting time, you know, and we just send them back. Any questions?
No.
Ms. Trejo, any questions?
No, one of the things that Jenny mentioned, Ms. Murillo mentioned was, like when you're asked to go in and cover a class, you won't be asked to go and cover a class unless that person is returning materials. Other than that, don't walk into the class,
Yes.
not even walk in. Okay, ladies? Yes. And then, that's about it, and no phones when you're monitoring, no cell phones, please, 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 okay? I don't want it to be our team, okay? Okay.
We got you.
Anything else?
No?
No? Yay, then we're done.
Where's the coffee?
Okay.
Where's
Thank you so much.
Where's the latte?
Starbucks.
Where are the frappuccinos? ¿Vieron ganas?
Oh my
At this
goodness,
time?
I need it.
No,
Ay,
yo ahorita at 3 o'clock. Ay, what happened?
No sé por qué te pusiste tan.
No sé, me faltan,
You went too
me
fast.
faltan 10
10 minutes. Yeah.
It's because I think you just like, you should like ask questions and then.
No, I haven't stopped it.
But you can cut it.
Yeah.